I'm very aware how tedious it could be just to hear someone talking about their illness and complaints when you've all got your own. But hopefully there might be one or two parallels with my experiences and maybe some of the things that I've done or gone through that might help slightly. Just to give you a bit of background, at the end of 2014 I volunteered for a charity in Central America for 3 months, and while I was there I lost quite a lot of weight, and I was ill a couple of times, but I wasn't living in the best conditions. The diet wasn't very varied, and I just put it down to being away. On my return, I still wasn't 100%, but not bad enough to go to the doctor. But eventually, after the summer of 2015, I had persistent upper abdominal pain, which was worse on eating, and I had lower back pain and gastro problems, to put it politely. I eventually went to the doctor. My wife, Sally, was very keen for me to go to the doctor, which I did. Had various tests, blood tests. They prescribed a omeprazole, a gastrosuppressant, and recommended Gaviscon, but really didn't know how to proceed. And really almost said they couldn't do very much more. So, because there was no improvement, I asked for a private referral, and they said, well, the best thing to do is go to an endocrinologist, or possibly a gastroenterologist. They weren't really sure which, and I said, well, just do both. The endocrinologist thought it was thyroid related after blood tests and a thyroid scan, so he thought he had a project. But then I also went to the gastroenterologist and I had the endoscopy, gastroscopy, and I'm sure a number of you will have gone through the same things. And he thought it was probably a post-infective dyspepsia or IBS as a result of what had happened to me in Central America. The last resort, he said, was to go and have a CT scan, but he said, I don't think it'll show anything, and I think you just got to bear it out. So I had a CT scan at the beginning of December, and that, of course, immediately showed that I had a pancreatic primary with multiple liver metastases. Ironically, I'd read an article in the paper the previous weekend talking about the silent killer, which was pancreatic cancer, and I recognized some of my symptoms. Naturally, like I'm sure you all have done, I had a liver biopsy, referred to an oncologist, and he advised me it was cancer, but he didn't know what. But the fact that I wasn't on my knees or in a wheelchair, he thought indicated it might not be standard pancreatic cancer, and it could be a NET, the type of cancer that Steve Jobs had, which carried a better prognosis. And we then had a wait for the results of that. And again, I'm sure you've all gone through this, a horrible wait. And fortunately, it showed that I did have a NET, which I saw as a big bonus just because the prognosis was so much better. And I suppose my initial thoughts were, I was 57, I'm a non-smoker, very occasional drinker, eat healthily, very strong constitution. How has this happened? Both my parents are in their 90s, and they're still with us today. Had I not requested private treatment, I might have had to wait a lot longer, and I'm sure many of you will have had to wait longer than I did. That's not really fair, the fact that I got a quicker diagnosis. Had I been let down by the GP? Well, probably not, because they're not well informed about NETs. And like all cancers, early diagnosis makes a huge difference, and obviously mine had metastasized to my liver, and again, I'm sure that rings true with many of you. I was referred, fortunately, to Professor Mayer here at the Royal Free, and further tests on the liver biopsy showed that I had a grade 3 tumour, or grade 3 well-differentiated NETs in my pancreas and liver. And in January 2016, I began chemotherapy, FCYST chemotherapy. And really that wait was the worst thing. I was just desperate to have some treatment, really. And I was very lucky that I had chemo And I tolerated the chemo very well. First few days were always worse with constipation, but Movicol helped that. I had a sensitive abdomen, but I resorted to braces rather than a belt. Back pain, fatigue, nothing really too debilitating. Tingling hands and feet developed after a few sessions. Luckily, I don't get significant effects of carcinoid syndrome, so I don't get flushing and persistent diarrhea. I understand for many people that actually the treatment, going for the chemo, was the worst bit, but I didn't really have that view. I felt really positive. I just thought, I'm going for chemo, I'm doing something, and that's good. It's not comfortable, but at least I'm doing something positive, and I almost wanted the next session to come along sooner. So I was obviously disappointed when a few times my white blood cell count was low and I had to have the chemo delayed. I'd been told there was a 30 to 40% chance by Professor Mayer of a response, but needless to say, we trawled the internet as you do these days and saw that if I did get a response, it was going to come back at some point. It also, of course, showed me that the chemotherapy wasn't a particularly new treatment. The FCYST chemo wasn't a new treatment. And I think I was probably a little bit disappointed in that because there's so much publicity in the papers about new, fantastic cancer treatments. I'd sort of hoped I might be getting something new and exciting and that might be a cure. But anyway, the good news was that after 3 months, my scan showed there'd been some reduction, and after 6 months, the full term of chemo, it showed a further reduction. And in June last year, I finished chemo and then was told, we now do nothing and you have a scan in 3 months and we see if it's come back. That was a difficult thing I found really hard to cope with, and it was clear I was in very good hands, but the idea of doing nothing really didn't appeal to me at all. Everyone had said, and I sort of thought, I ought to have a second opinion. And again, we trawled the internet. Sally's been very proactive in doing that with me. I looked at the USA, where surgical intervention seems to be much more prevalent, particularly even when tumours are metastasised, but I was told surgical intervention in my case wasn't an option. There were various centres of excellence in Europe, and the one I found that I thought I ought to go and see was in Sweden at Uppsala, which has been mentioned already. Partly because I read in the paper about some trials they were doing on a new drug, and I thought maybe that's something that I could try. I went over there, we had a very nice weekend in Stockholm, it's lovely, so what's not to like? And I felt that they were largely putting the ball in my court and saying, well, what do you want to happen next? And I said, well, I want some treatment, and they said, well, probably PRRT is what you could have. And you can come back in September and we can do that for you. It's quite expensive, but we can do it. So on my return, I asked for another meeting with Tim Mayer because he'd been brilliant, and I had every confidence in him, but I just thought I ought to have another opinion. And he was obviously very interested to hear what they'd said in Sweden. He said there's no conclusive evidence that continuous treatment is of any beneficial help, and that was really interesting and useful to hear. He also said quite sensibly it's a good idea to let your body recover from chemotherapy. I still have numbness in my feet, and I'm sure any of you who've had chemo have had that go on for a long time, and that's a year later. But since chemo, I have put weight back on. Tim also talked about alternative treatments, and that was the other big factor, that we can give you alternative treatments when appropriate. And he talked about, sunitinib, everolimus, PRRT, and somatostatin analogues. And he also suggested, which was really good, that I went to see one of Professor Kaplan's team so that I got another opinion from within the Royal Free, and that might reassure me and give me a different perspective. The conclusion of going elsewhere, coming back, seeing Professor Mayer again, was that the treatment available at the Royal Free is about as good as it gets. they have the leading NET specialists there are, and the multidisciplinary approach, which I directly benefited from, was at the heart of that. So the next consultation I had was with Dr. Mandair, one of Professor Kaplan's team, and he prescribed and said I could take lanreotide, a somatostatin analogue. Now previously I'd been told that my tumour was too high a grade for that, so I was slightly surprised but nevertheless delighted, because again I felt I was doing something. After the first treatment I did have chronic abdominal pain the first evening, but that settled down, and I think my body, probably like it tends to, is adjusted to the treatments. And much like the chemo, I found the side effects not too bad. I mean, they're there. I have a few days which are not great after the injections. Ash did the first couple of injections, which went absolutely fine. I did find that going to the doctors, they weren't quite so skilled, and certainly on one of the injections I had, it's a gel, as you probably know, they pushed it in, I think, a bit too quickly, and that did give me problems. I had a big lump. Again, looked on the internet and it said it must be delivered slowly. So next time I went back, you know, I had a sort of dead leg, dead bum for a while afterwards. Next time I went back, I said, look, can you just make sure you do this slowly? I know it's not the most comfortable thing, but, you know, better it's done slowly. And since then, it's been fine. I had another scan in April and no regrowth. So great news. We don't know whether that's the chemo still working or the lanreotide, but it's good. It's good news for me. I have found, as I've said, the Royal Free and the NHS to be absolutely fantastic. But I have found it's useful to do a few things. One is, if there have been important results, it's been a great idea to chase them before I go for my consultation, because there have been occasions where results haven't been back. If there was a particular aspect of a blood test like chromogranin or something that needed measuring, I did tend to chase them up. I always take a notepad when I go for consultations, because some of it's quite technical and I know I won't remember all of it. I also go with a list of questions, which over the 3-month wait, I usually make notes on my phone and think of things to ask, because I find that particularly useful. I was taking lansoprazole, but I stopped that some months ago and I found that I don't actually need anything. So again, really lucky with that. We've obviously taken the time to find out more. The internet is a fantastic source, the Net Patient Foundation. There are various things that are really good. I found the YouTube videos of the previous patient forums fantastic and really useful and interesting. And obviously everyone at the Royal Free has been fantastically approachable. Even if I can't, it's 3 months until I see a consultant again. There were occasions where either I or Sally or myself emailed Tim Mayer, and he always replied really quickly. The NET nurses can be called. They never answer the phone, as we know, but they do call you back. And they're incredibly knowledgeable and helpful. I've seen the nutritionist, who was good, and obviously had the booklet, which is, again, really good. One of the things I feel I've benefited from, I have changed my diet, partly through trial and error, partly guidance from reading, but I generally now eat smaller meals because I have less discomfort. But I do snack between meals. I have a yogurt or a banana or something healthy. I know my body doesn't tolerate alcohol and spicy food, so I just don't have it. And I drink lots of water, which seems to help me. And I concentrate on easily digested food, which for me works. So I eat less red meat and I eat more vegetarian and fish. I did try a NutriBullet because I thought it might be really good for me to have kale and some of these fantastic shakes. And actually, I tried it and my body hated it. I was absolutely doubled up because raw food is obviously not that digestible, and a kale shake was exactly what I didn't need. So the NutriBullet went straight in the cupboard, never to see the light of day again. I do take a probiotic and B3 as advised by the nutritionist here. I've looked at other dietary supplements, but largely given them a wide berth. So I don't follow one of the alternative cancer diets that people you see on the internet, apricot kernels and cannabis, because I think potentially they could do me more harm than good. And I've read quite a lot, and I think, you know, it's been useful to read a lot about diet and about everything to do with NETs, anything I can get hold of. The diet may have no clinical effect on my tumours, but it makes me feel more comfortable. And it also makes me feel I'm doing something positive about my illness. And looking after my body also sort of makes me think that it might mean that my system has a better chance of fighting the cancer. I'm also happiest when I'm active, so I do take lots of exercise, walking, bike rides, nothing too strenuous, but you know, when I can, I will probably do a lot more. I also do yoga every morning, which is pretty un-me, and it's largely to stretch, but again, I find it helps me. I've had a go at meditation, but I think my mind's a bit too active, but I'd love to have a go at that, because anything that doesn't do any harm can possibly do me some good. My personal outlook is that I can't change. I mean, the previous speaker talked about being stoic, and I can't change my diagnosis or illness, but I can possibly help the outcome. And I'm lucky that I'm generally quite a positive person. And I'm even luckier that the treatment I've had today has worked. I accept that regrowth will happen at some stage, but when it does, it's very reassuring to know that there are other options available. Since I was diagnosed, we've lost 2 close friends with other cancers who weren't so lucky, didn't have cancers that were as slow as I happen to have, or for which there were treatments available. So again, I consider myself very fortunate in that respect. My symptoms are not generally too debilitating, so I'm much more fortunate than a lot of people. I feel well most of the time, so it doesn't stop me doing things. I also don't look ill, and I'm sure a lot of you have had this when people say to you, but you look so well. And I use that as a positive as well. It's actually quite nice not to look ill, because I don't particularly think I would benefit from other people's sympathy, and I don't particularly need it personally. I think it's probably harder for my family in many ways than it is for me. I'm very lucky. My wife is incredibly supportive. We have 3 sons who treat me with the same lack of respect that they always have. And we deal with it a lot of the time with a sense of humour, which actually, again, works for us. Sometimes it's a rather black sense of humour. If I spend a lot of money on a pair of shoes and think, well, am I going to get the benefit of them? Sally always says, well, don't worry, one of the boys could always have them. The worst part for me is not the tests or the treatment, because I'm immune to needles being stuck in me now. But I suppose, again, something that Kim referred to, which is the uncertainty. But perhaps more than that, the idea that I have no treatment and I'm just waiting, and I find that quite difficult. So just to be on lanreotide at the moment, even if it's doing nothing, and I guess even if I was on a placebo and didn't know it, I feel that something is happening. And as a result of the NET, I have lots of questions. You know, we need to find the causes of NETs. There needs to be quicker diagnosis. There need to be more treatments. And research, obviously, is a crucial part of that. It's a long and slow process, but it's important that it gets support both in participation and trials, which we're probably all doing, and where practical, financial as well. The Neuroendocrine Research Fund, which operates under the umbrella of the royalty-free charity, is something that we can all donate to directly, and it does go directly to the right fund, if that's what you want to do. I was lucky to get invited by Professor Mayer to the UCL Cancer Institute, and the research being done by them is massively impressive. It's already made a difference, and it will make a difference in the future, I'm sure. It would be good to see more non-clinical research to see if there are other external factors that are causing NETs and other cancers. You know, I don't know what it is. Is it lifestyle? Is it pollution? Is it stress? There are potentially all sorts of things, and I don't know that there's probably enough of that. A recent TV program, which probably many of you saw, A Time to Live, was inspirational in that many people on there felt that there were some positives to be taken from their cancer diagnosis. And I would certainly prefer not to have been diagnosed with this. But perhaps it has changed me, maybe for the better in some ways. I'm certainly stronger. I'm probably more difficult in other ways. I'm certainly a bit less tolerant, but equally small things don't worry me. But overall, as I say, I would rather not have had it, but the fact I have does hopefully change me slightly for the better. Thank you very much.